There's been quite a few people commenting on some of my recent videos suggesting they think that with the tumbling price of full frame technologies these days, that soon full frame will become a normality and APS-C cameras will just be dead and buried. And I don't think that's true. The reason being is that while it's true that full frame sensors are becoming cheaper for manufacturers to make, APS-C sensors are also becoming cheaper for manufacturers to make. So while you've got the likes of Canon releasing the RP as the new entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera for 1,500 quid, you've also got them releasing the likes of the Rebel series cameras for £200 and £300. So there will always be a huge price difference between APS-C and full frame. I think there's a notion that while phones are getting better and better, eventually they're going to seep into the realms of taking over from cameras. I think they will, but only from the small sensor cameras like the compacts and the bridge. As phones now start to see the introduction of optical zoom lenses being built into them, then yes, small sensor compact and bridge cameras are going to start to become obsolete. But until they find some way of fitting a 24mm APS-C sensor into the back of a phone, I don't think phones are going to take over from interchangeable lens cameras. And if they were, then the first ones to fall would surely be Micro Four Thirds, because Micro Four Thirds is not only smaller than APS-C, so thus closer to phones, but also the price of Micro Four Thirds is disproportional to APS-C. APS-C is the biggest selling format for cameras at the minute, and the lenses that they're producing are very budget friendly because they're sold in such large numbers. But Micro Four Thirds, even though the format is smaller than APS-C, you tend to find that the prices can actually be more expensive, presumably because they're just not able to sell them in such high volumes. Now, some people have said that the reason they think APS-C is going to disappear is because it sits in the middle of Micro Four Thirds and full frame, so it's kind of bridging the gap between the two. If you took out APS-C, you'd have a clear difference and a clear step between Micro Four Thirds systems and full frame systems. But again, I don't see that as likely because the likes of Canon and Nikon and Sony aren't producing Micro Four Thirds cameras, so they would have to introduce Micro Four Thirds before they then filter that APS-C. And then what do you do with the lenses? One of the big benefits for me I found with the likes of the Canon EF mount, the Nikon F mount and the Sony E mount is that they produce full frame and APS-C lenses in the same mount. So you can start on an APS-C format, you can buy APS-C lenses, but you can also buy some full frame lenses that will mount onto it. And then as you then start to progress and transition over to full frame, you can keep using those lenses. The difference between Micro Four Thirds and full frame, however, is so big that it wouldn't be able to work that way. If both systems were using one mount, then the Micro Four Thirds lenses would obviously be small, designed for Micro Four Thirds. The full frame lenses are going to be much bigger, designed for full frame. It's unlikely that people are going to want to be buying big full frame lenses to go onto a small Micro Four Thirds body. I think we'd see Micro Four Thirds disappear before we saw APS-C disappear. But again, I don't think Micro Four Thirds is going either, because I think there's more of a segregated market there. I think Olympus and Panasonic and Fuji and the likes are quite happy sticking with the medium format, Micro Four Thirds format, and Canon and Nikon and Sony are happier sticking with, no, Fuji's APS-C. The Micro Four Thirds lot are quite happy sticking with Micro Four Thirds. The APS-C lot are happier sticking with APS-C. There, we got it. The driving force for any manufacturer as to what they're going to carry on producing is going to be based off what's selling and what's making them money. And at the end of the day, APS-C cameras far outsell any of the other formats on the market. And while it is true we are seeing full frame prices coming down as demand for full frame increases and the supply increases, then the price is going to start to tumble. I don't think we'll ever reach a point where full frame sensors are being produced at near enough the same price as APS-C sensors, and thus making APS-C redundant. And even if they did, you've then got the argument of the size of the camera body and the size of the lenses, and there's a lot of people who are drawn to the appeals of APS-C mirrorless cameras for the much smaller form factor and the small form factor of the lenses, because they don't want to be carrying around big, bulky, heavy systems to begin with. I mean, you've only got to look at the likes of the A6500. In terms of specs, this camera is pretty much on par with the A7 III. The only difference is this is an APS-C camera versus a full frame camera, and yet this is about half the price of the A7 III. Now, obviously, there's benefits to full frame, but there's a lot of hobby shooters who are going to look at these two cameras and not be able to justify like double the price for a full frame setup and then all the additional costs of the lenses to go with it. So I don't see it as likely that APS-C is going anywhere anytime soon. But what are your thoughts on the matter? Do you think APS-C is here to stay, or do you think full frame is going to take over one day? Leave your thoughts and comments in the box down below. Thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.